Welcome to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. Do you need help figuring out which schools to apply to or how to get into the world's top MBA programs? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others on this podcast and on our site, touchmba.com, as they seek the admissions edge. And now, here's your host, Darren Joe.
All right, welcome everybody to the Touch MBA podcast. I'm Darren here, your host, and this week's guest is a good friend of mine. Mark Zee is a second-year student at the UCLA Anderson School of Business, and the reason why I brought Mark on the show is because he's a non-traditional candidate. Before he applied to Anderson, he was an actor in Asia for over 6 years. He started a business in Singapore. He's worked for an education company, and he's also worked in finance as well. So I just thought it'd be great to sort of pick Mark's brain about how he applied to a school like Anderson and also just to learn more about the culture of the school and what's going on over there. So welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks, Darren.
So my first question to you, Mark, is, why business school in the first place?
That's a great question. I get asked that all the time. So for me, as an older candidate, I needed to accelerate my business career. And business school is just the perfect way to do that. Like you said, I have a background in entertainment, and I also have a background in finance, and I wanted to bridge those two things. And Anderson is just the perfect place to do it at.
Yeah, so, why is that?
Anderson being in LA is obviously really key. We have a lot of alumni at all the major film studios, and television companies, cable companies, so all across the entertainment industry. And so that's number one. And then secondly, the school's just a great school as well. So I've been able to get this great foundational business education while having access to the entertainment industry here in LA.
Yeah, and so maybe we could take a step back and talk about your application. I know it's a few years ago, so
yeah.
But what was your post-MBA goal?
So my post-MBA goal was to work for a major studio on the distribution side and really get a good feel for what that is. I think eventually I would like to maybe run my own company, entertainment company, and I really wanted to get a chance to work at a big film studio first to get that sort of side of it, since I already have the front of the camera side of it, and just balance that out.
You had done so many different things. How did you narrow that all down into just a couple essays?
Yeah, it was really tough. It's hard to look at your life and just sort of distill it to several paragraphs. But I think it's really important. I think that's a great question, especially for non-traditional candidates. You really need to pick and choose what's most important to you and also what you think is most important to the school. For me, knowing that I wanted to go to Anderson and knowing that I wanted to be in the entertainment industry on the business side, I just really focused on my entertainment backgrounds, particularly in Asia, because that's a huge area for the studios right now, and then also the finance part of me.
So did you not even mention the fact that you started your own business?
I did talk a little bit about that, at least the relevant parts. Well, to me, having a successful business, I don't know, do the viewers know that you were my business partner?
They do not. Now they do.
We had it running for a couple of years, so I think that showed a lot of initiative and showed that you could manage people. So that to me was important to highlight. But aside from that, because it was more in import, export, and retail, it wasn't as relevant to the narrative that I was trying to write.
Right. So I think that's one big takeaway from this talk, is that as a non-traditional candidate, you really have to hone your story or narrative to what you want to do after business school and to the business school you're applying to. Even if you've done, a lot of amazing things like Mark has, you have to only pick a few things to focus on. Otherwise, it's just too hard to keep track. Focus on that story. And so could you talk a little bit about what your experience at Anderson has been like in the classroom as a non-traditional candidate?
Sure. So it was definitely a challenge at first. The classes are pretty rigorous, especially your core classes right at the beginning. And I had been out of school for 9+ years. And then on top of that, even though I did study finance in college, it was a minor for me. And also when we went to school, it was a lot more theoretical. So a lot of the classes that I was taking now were just very hard skill oriented, very practical business classes like accounting, business stats, strategy, operations, those kind of things.
Did you ever feel left behind because you didn't have that training compared to the consultants and bankers in your class?
I didn't want to say left behind necessarily, but I felt like I had to catch up, and that was the challenge for me. And the great thing is that people at Anderson are very giving in terms of helping each other out within your learning teams and participating in class. So I learned a lot from them, and that actually helped me a ton. Even though it was a little bit intimidating at first, getting sort of a chance to glean knowledge from the bankers, the consultants, the people who were in more traditional paths was really helpful.
So they didn't look at you in disgust because you couldn't.
It's a little hard
to figure out a spreadsheet.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think they also realized that I went to a really good university. Do they know we went to the same college together too?
They do not.
Well, now they do. Listeners know. So we went to a great school, so they knew that, and they also knew that I'd been out of school for a really long time. So even though I hadn't had some of the traditional business experiences, I did have some business experience, and I also just had a lot of world experience. And I think that was always interesting to them to hear my perspective. I think was added to the classroom.
Awesome. And where do you feel like most of your classmates are going into? Consulting jobs, banking jobs, tech jobs, entertainment jobs?
Yeah, so it's really spread out. Much more so, I think, than some of the East Coast schools where I think you have more people going into the traditional fields of consulting and finance. A lot of my classmates, I think, are going into tech. Just really hot right now. It's they're hiring a lot of MBAs, so they'll be going up to San Francisco. All the major players, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, so people will be going to Seattle as well. So tech, and then entertainment obviously is a big one, but entertainment doesn't hire as many MBAs, so that limits it a little bit. But then we have a lot of entrepreneurs, we have a lot of real estate people, and a lot of nonprofit people as well. So you got that social enterprise as well.
So you're a second year now, and you completed an internship after your first year.
Yeah.
How did you find that internship? And could you tell us, what you did?
I'm actually interning there still. 9 months later, they asked me to stay on, and I was learning enough that I thought it was worthwhile for me to stay. And entertainment is really important to network as much as possible. So I am at 20th Century Fox on the international film distribution side in a strategy and operations group. So I got the internship through a classmate of mine, actually, who had interned there previously, and she just gave me a good recommendation, and my boss interviewed me and hit it off, and like I said, here I am still 9 months later.
Wow. So how did you meet her? How did you meet this classmate?
So we're both in the Entertainment Management Association together. So it's one of the professional clubs we have at Anderson. There are dozens of professional clubs at Anderson, but it's one of the main ones. And these professional organizations are a really important part of Anderson. They're sort of linked to all the alumni in specific industries. They also bring in a lot of industry professionals to give lectures and to come in for networking mixers, that sort of thing. So they provide a really great service.
So would you say those clubs are the biggest leads into possible job opportunities through, meeting people through these clubs and alumni through these clubs? Because that's what it kind of sounds like.
Yeah, I would say for entertainment specifically, it has been. So we have a great career resource center as well. And a lot of companies, especially the bigger sort of companies in CPG, finance, consulting, the more traditional companies, will post directly through our career management center. But for some of the other industries like entertainment, real estate, they go directly through a lot of times the actual organizations, because I think the rationale is just that these kids are really involved and they're really into the networking aspect of it, and they don't want to post to just a greater student population. They want to just really focus on the people who are really passionate about those kind of jobs.
Awesome. So I think this is probably the case at most of the top business schools, that the student clubs are really important
Mm-hmm.
for professional exposure, obviously, but education, finding jobs, networking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So definitely research the clubs that you'd be most interested in at your target schools, like Mark did. What about the culture at Anderson? I mean, you mentioned that your classmates are really collaborative and giving, but is there any other way you would describe the culture?
Well, I think it's related to a lot of the things that I've said. I think that a school is only as good as its students. So whether we're talking about like the student-led clubs and the student government and all that, which really has a huge say at Anderson at least, all the way to the classroom experience, right? Like the contributions that your peers are making in answering questions during class, and then the social aspect as well. So much of business school is the networking and the social aspect of it, and so the thing that I like best about Anderson is its culture. The people there, as opposed to maybe some of the more traditional business schools out east, I really do feel like it's more of a family, and you're really not competing necessarily with each other. I think everyone has the idea that the better everyone does at Anderson in the real world, the better for the school at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you can see that with the alumni. Even if you cold call them with emails, they'll get back to you, and they've been very, very open to talking with us and really helping us through everything, giving us advice. So it's great. I think the culture permeates like your whole student experience and then continues on even after.
I mean, that is such an important part of whatever school you pick.
I think it's the most important.
Yeah, it's the most important. I mean, it's the one thing that you only get your MBA once. And so what family, quote unquote, do you want to be a part of?
Yeah.
What sort of culture you want to be a part of? So that's interesting to hear that about Anderson. I guess my last question to you is, if you could rewind the clock and go back to 2 years ago when you first started the program, would you have done anything differently? Would you have taken advantage of certain resources or been more social, been more academic?
I'm not sure I could have been more social. Probably could have been more academic. No, I think I actually had a really great balance. So I think I was pretty serious about my classes, especially, as we've talked about, I didn't have that foundation in terms of just business academics. So it's really important for me to focus on that, and I have.
And now you feel you do.
Yeah, I definitely feel much more comfortable in that respect. And then on the social side, I was a social chair. I organized a lot of the events at Anderson, so I feel like I really got a lot out of that as well. And I'm going to miss a lot of the people. There'll definitely be people who will stay in LA, but a lot of people will be going up to San Francisco, Seattle, going to New York, all over the place really, and international students will be going back to their home countries. So yeah, it's crazy to think that we'll be done in a few months. If there's one thing I would recommend for a non-traditional student, is to make sure that your hard skills like Excel and PowerPoint are up to a standard that other business school students have. And there are a lot of great resources on the web. There's lynda.com. There's just Google Excel tutorials and just go through them, put yourself through them. I think that would help a lot because it doesn't matter what industry you're in or what role you're in, you're probably going to have to deal with those things like spreadsheet and PowerPoint a lot.
Yeah.
Definitely have in my internships. So I recommend that. But yeah, it's something that, it's a great 2 years, and it's only 2 years, sadly. So you just really, really try to take advantage of every aspect of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your insights, and it was fun having you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your #1 school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.